Tyler Reed had been a salvage operator in the outer fringe for almost 20 years. A lot of people thought he was crazy for working out here where no one else wanted to go, but Tyler liked being alone. There were no corporate bosses breathing down his neck and no politicians making dumb rules. It was just him and his old ship pulling valuable scrap from abandoned wrecks floating in space. At first, today's job seemed pretty normal. According to his scanners, a Kravix warship had been floating near the Vale Nebula for about 3 weeks. Tyler could legally take anything he wanted from the ship because it wasn't sending out any distress signals and no one had claimed salvage rights yet. Kravix military gear sold for a lot of money on the black market, so this could be a good deal. Tyler got dressed and used a maglock to attach his boots to the outside of the abandoned ship. He cut through the emergency airlock quickly with his cutting torch and pulled himself inside. He first noticed how cold everything was. Not just cold like in space, but cold that gets into your bones even when you're wearing an insulated suit. He saw something was very wrong when the light from his helmet swept across the hallway. The walls were torn to shreds. Not damaged by gunfire or explosions, but ripped apart as if something huge had dragged claws through the metal walls. Tyler had seen damage from war before, but this was different. This was about me. This was anger. He moved deeper into the ship, following the path of destruction. Blood droplets that had frozen in space looked like dark rubies frozen in time. Kravix was the green part of it. But some of it was black and Tyler didn't know what bled black. The bodies began to appear in the main hallway. Kravix soldiers, their armor broken and bent in ways that shouldn't be possible. Whatever killed them had the strength to tear through armor with just their hands. Or claws. Before he got to the cargo bay, Tyler counted a total of 8 bodies. He wanted to turn around and leave, to forget he ever found this ship, but curiosity and 20 years of salvage instincts made him keep going. The cargo bay was huge and could hold weapons and other supplies for long military campaigns. The deck was covered in broken crates that had been ripped open. Tyler's boots made a loud noise on the metal floor as he turned on the artificial gravity again to make it easier to move around. His light moved around the room and stopped on something in the far corner. Heavy industrial restraints were attached to the deck plating, which is the kind used to keep dangerous cargo safe while it is being moved. But these chains weren't just heavy, they were also glowing with a faint blue energy that crackled and sparked. Tyler had seen energy restraints before, mostly in high-security prisons. These weren't just for holding something. They were supposed to hurt it. He moved closer and his heart raced in his chest. A huge shape was slumped against the wall at the end of the chains. Tyler first thought it was some kind of cargo container or equipment, but then it moved. Just a little bit. A shallow breath that made the whole body shake. Tyler's hand automatically went to the plasma pistol on his hip as he moved forward again. His light finally showed what the chains were holding and his blood froze. The thing was huge. Even when it was lying down, it was at least 12 feet tall. Its body was covered in black fur that looked like it absorbed the light from his helmet. The fur was matted with dried blood and burns from the energy restraints. The eyes, on the other hand, really grabbed Tyler's attention. There were 6 of them, 3 in each row, and they glowed a dim amber color like dying embers. Those eyes followed him with a level of intelligence that made every hair on Tyler's neck stand on end. He knew what this was. Everyone in the galaxy knew, even though most people thought they were all dead. Of Vrykal. The top predators from the outer rim. The species that the collective said were too dangerous to live and killed off in a planned way 30 years ago. Tyler was just a kid when it happened, but he remembered the news reports showing the orbital bombardment of their homeworld. The collective said it was necessary because the Vrykal were mindless killers who would eventually attack the civilized galaxy. Tyler didn't see a killer with no brain in those eyes now, though. He saw hurt. He saw tiredness. He saw someone who had fought hard and lost everything. The Vrykal's breath was shallow and not regular. The energy restraints were meant to slowly drain the life force, turning death into a long torture instead of a quick execution. Someone who chained this animal here wanted it to be in pain for as long as possible. The Kravix soldiers must have been taking it somewhere, most likely to sell it to the highest bidder. On the black market, Vrykal were worth a lot of money, either as rare hunting trophies or as research specimens for military bioweapons programs. Tyler stood there for a long time with his hand on his gun, his mind racing through his options. It was clear what the right thing to do was. Turn around, seal the airlock, and let nature take its course. Forget that he ever saw this. It looked so weak that the Vrykal would be dead in a few hours anyway. No one would ever know he had been here. But Tyler had never been very good at making the right choice. He was out here in the fringe instead of living comfortably in collective space with a pension and a quiet life because of that. He took his hand off his gun and put it on his tool belt instead. He took out a multi-scanner and looked at the system that kept him in check. Military-grade security protocols that were hard to understand, but Tyler could handle them. He had broken into worse systems while saving high-security cargo containers. Tyler said to himself, "This is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done," as he used his fingers to work the scanner's interface. And that's saying something. The Vrykal's eyes followed him, but the creature didn't make a sound. It was too weak to even growl at him. Tyler found the main power source for the restraints and began to get around the security lockouts one at a time. He worked carefully for almost 20 minutes, knowing that one wrong move could either electrocute him or set off some sort of self-destruct mechanism. Finally, the last lockout came off. The blue energy that was crackling through the chains went out. The restraints fell off with a loud clang that echoed in the empty cargo bay. The Vrykal fell forward and its huge body hit the deck hard. The chains were no longer holding it up, so its breathing became even harder. Tyler could see that it had dozens of cuts and burns all over its body that hadn't been treated in days or even weeks. Tyler could swear he saw something like gratitude in those 6 amber eyes that looked up at him. Or maybe they were confused about why this strange person hadn't just let it die. Tyler said, "Yeah, well, don't thank me yet." He was already thinking about how hard it would be to get a 12-foot predator back to his ship. "I think we're both going to regret this." Tyler's job as a salvage worker was to get a 12-foot unconscious predator from a wrecked ship back to his own ship. This was one of the hardest things he had ever done. He spent 4 hours setting up all of his magnetic grav sleds to make a makeshift stretcher that could hold the Vrykal's huge weight. The creature was out cold the whole time, which was probably for the best. Tyler didn't want to think about what would happen if it woke up angry and confused while they were floating in space between 2 ships. Tyler was tired and doubting every choice he had made that had brought him to this point by the time he finally got the Vrykal safely stowed in his cargo hold. The Drifter's Hope, his ship, wasn't really made for medical emergencies. It was a salvage ship, made to carry scrap metal and old tools, not to take care of dying alien predators. But Tyler had trained as a field medic 20 years ago when he was in the Colonial Defense Force. That was before he got tired of following orders and thought salvage work would be a better fit for his personality. He cleared out a part of the cargo hold and started gathering everything that might help keep this thing alive. He didn't have a lot of medical supplies on board. He had some antiseptic spray for small cuts and burns, a box of regenerative bandages that were probably past their expiration date, and a veterinary medical kit that he had bought a few months ago when he was thinking about getting a ship's cat for company. He had never gotten around to getting the cat, but now he was glad he had the supplies. Tyler spent the next hour cleaning wounds that looked like they had been made by torture devices and energy weapons. Some of the burns went deep into the muscle, and he could see where the restraints had left scars on the Vrykal's fur that would never go away. The person who caught this creature didn't just want to keep it, they wanted to break it. Setting up the 4-line was the hardest part. Tyler had to guess the right amount of fluids and antibiotics to give the creature based on its body mass. He didn't even know if human medicine would work on Vrykal physiology. He had no idea if he was helping or poisoning it. But if he did nothing, he would definitely see it die, so he went with his best guess and hoped for the best. The Vrykal hardly moved for the first 3 days. Tyler kept checking on it every few hours, like a worried parent watching over a sick child, because its breathing was still shallow and uneven. He had set up a system to keep an eye on the creature and let him know if its vital signs changed a lot, but he still couldn't help but go down to the cargo hold to look. Tyler started doing research while he was waiting for so long. The database on his ship didn't have much information about the Vrykal. This was mostly because the collective had either destroyed or classified most records after the extinction event. But Tyler had learned a long time ago how to get to the dark parts of the Galactic Information Network, where deleted files and censored documents are stored in old formats. What he found made him more and more angry. The official story said that the Vrykal were mindless monsters, but they weren't. They had been smart, advanced pack hunters with complicated social structures. Some scientists looked at their mental skills and compared them to those of dolphins or even early humans. They had language, culture, and technology, but they had never made space travel on their own. Tyler had to go through layers of encryption to get to classified military reports that held the real reason for their extinction. The Vrykal homeworld was built on top of one of the biggest Ethereum deposits in all of space. Ethereum was the rare element that made faster-than-light travel possible and was the fuel that kept the whole galactic economy going. The collective wanted those deposits, but the Vrykal wouldn't let mining happen on their world. So the collective had made a problem. They had sent in troublemakers to start fights, and then they used those fights as an excuse to send in the military. The collective called the Vrykal a threat to galactic peace and ordered them to be completely wiped out when they defended their land. The bombardment from space lasted for 3 days. A lot of Vrykal had died. Over the next few years, the few survivors were hunted down and sold to research facilities or rich collectors who wanted rare trophies. Tyler felt sick to his stomach after reading those files. He had been in the Colonial Defense Force. He had faith in the collective's goal of keeping the peace and keeping civilized worlds safe from harm. Now he was learning that the group he had worked for had killed people for money, and everyone had just believed what they were told. Tyler came down to the cargo hold on the 4th morning with a new bag of 4 fluid and saw that the Vrykal was awake. All 6 amber eyes were open and following him as he moved around the room. Tyler stopped in the doorway, and his hand instinctively moved toward the gun on his belt. He then forced himself to calm down. "Easy there," Tyler said, keeping his voice steady and calm. "I'm not here to hurt you. You just need to change your 4, okay?" The Vrykal stayed still and quiet. It just looked at him with those smart eyes. Tyler saw that the creature's breathing had gotten a lot better. The wounds were starting to look better, but it would take weeks or even months for them to heal completely. Tyler walked up slowly, making sure his movements were slow and not threatening. The Vrykal's muscles tightened as it got closer, but it didn't try to attack. Tyler could see the amazing details of its features up close. The fur wasn't just black, it also had subtle patterns of dark gray that caught the light at certain angles. The 6 eyes weren't just placed randomly, they gave the creature almost full spherical vision, letting it see threats from almost any angle. He took off the empty 4 bag and put on a new one, all the while speaking in that same calm voice. "It's been a while since you were out. You made me worry for a while. I wasn't sure if my human medicine would work on you, but it looks like we were lucky." The Vrykal made a sound, a low rumble that shook the cargo hold. It wasn't angry, it was more like curiosity and confusion. Tyler got the strong feeling that it was trying to figure out why he was helping instead of killing it or letting it die. "Yeah, I've been asking myself the same thing," Tyler said. He finished putting the new 4 in place and stepped back to give the creature some room. "I guess I'm just dumb like that. I've never been good at leaving things that need help." In the next few days, a strange pattern began to form. Tyler would go down to the cargo hold several times a day to check on his unplanned patient. He would change the bandages, check the vital signs, and bring food even though he didn't know what Vrykal actually ate. He started with protein paste, which is what soldiers eat when they are in an emergency. He thought that a predator probably needed a lot of protein. At first, the Vrykal only took the food slowly, keeping an eye on Tyler the whole time as if it thought he was trying to trick it. But it started to calm down after the first few meals. It would even make a low rumbling sound when Tyler got close, which he saw as a sign of recognition rather than a threat. Tyler was most surprised by how careful the creature was. The Vrykal moved with surprising gentleness, even though it could easily tear through the ship's bulkheads. The Vrykal watched with great interest as Tyler brought tools down to fix a broken power coupling near the cargo hold. Tyler dropped a wrench at one point, and the creature picked it up with its huge clawed hand and held it out to him. Tyler looked at the tool that was offered to him for a long time before taking it. "Thanks," he said, feeling a little silly for thanking something that he thought couldn't understand him. But those 6 amber eyes seemed to know exactly what was going on. That's when Tyler understood how bad the galaxy had been. They didn't just kill animals. They had killed a lot of people who were different, people who couldn't fight back against airstrikes and military power. And now one of the last survivors was lying in his cargo hold, trusting him not to break that trust. Tyler said softly, "We're in this together now. For better or worse." By the end of the first week, Tyler had set up a routine with his strange passenger that was somewhat like a normal one. The Vrykal was healing faster than he had thought it would, which made sense because evolution probably favored quick recovery in top predators. The creature could now stand on its own, but it still moved slowly as if it were recovering from major surgery. Tyler had begun calling it Ash, in part because of its dark fur and in part because he needed a better way to talk to it than, "Hey you." Tyler had no way of knowing if Ash really had a name in its own language. The Vrykal's vocal cords just couldn't make the sounds that most galactic languages needed. Tyler could feel the rumbles, growls, and low-frequency sounds that came out. But Ash clearly understood language, even though it couldn't speak any that Tyler knew. The creature watched him all the time, its 6 eyes following every move and gesture, soaking up information like a sponge. Tyler had seen smart animals before, like dogs and dolphins, and even some of the more intelligent aliens he had met while working on salvage. But this was not the same. Ash didn't just learn patterns, it learned ideas. Tyler first saw it when he was fixing a broken power relay in the cargo hold. He had been talking to himself about the problem and saying out loud how a broken coupling was messing up the flow of energy. Ash had been watching from the corner, and when Tyler went to get a certain tool from his kit, the Vrykal reached over and grabbed the right wrench. "How did you know I needed that?" Tyler had asked, more to himself than to get an answer. Ash made one of its low rumbling sounds and tapped the broken coupling with one claw. Then it pointed at the wrench. It knew what Tyler was trying to do and what tool he would need. That's when Tyler came up with an idea. He climbed up to the bridge and looked through his storage lockers until he found an old translation pad, the kind that teachers used to help students learn new languages. It was made to work with pictures and symbols instead of spoken words, which is great for someone who can't speak normal language. He took it down to the cargo hold and spent the next hour teaching Ash how to use it. The Vrykal got the hang of it right away. It was choosing symbols to show basic needs within minutes. The sign for food. The sign for water. The sign of pain when the wounds were bothering it. But Ash quickly went beyond just his basic needs. It began to put symbols together in ways that the pad probably wasn't meant to, making complicated ideas. It would point at Tyler and then choose the symbols for thank you and help. It would point to itself and pick symbols that meant something like alone and last. When Tyler understood what Ash was trying to say, his chest tightened. "You're the last one, aren't you? The last one in your pack." Ash chose yes on the pad and then a number of other symbols. Tyler had to read it a few times before he understood, but in the end the story made sense. Ash had been part of a small group of survivors who had been able to avoid the collective's attempts to kill them for years. They had been hiding in the outer fringe, away from people, just trying to stay alive. 6 months ago, the Krovik's mercenaries found them. There had been a fight. Ash's pack had killed a few of the mercenaries, but there were too many of them and their technology was too good. The others had died right away. Someone knew how much money a live Vrykal would bring on the black market, so they caught Ash alive. The mercenaries had taken Ash in those torture restraints with the idea of selling it to a collective research facility that looked into biological weapons. But greed had torn them apart from the inside. The crew had begun to argue about how much money each person would get from the sale. The fight had gotten out of hand. In the middle of the chaos, Ash was able to get away and kill them all in self-defense. But by then Ash's injuries were too bad for him to fly the ship to safety. It had fallen in the cargo hold, thinking it would die there alone, just another victim of the galaxy's cruelty. Tyler listened to the story being told with signs and gestures, and he felt his anger growing. Not at Ash but at everything the galaxy had done. At the collective for ordering genocide. At the mercenaries for treating a living, thinking being like cargo. At everyone who had just believed the official story without asking any questions. "I'm sorry," Tyler said, knowing that wasn't enough. "I'm sorry for what they did to you and your people." Ash stared at him for a while before choosing symbols on the pad. "You are different. You help." "What?" Tyler thought about what to say. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because someone should have helped you a long time ago. I'm sick of living in a galaxy where we treat people like monsters just because we don't get them." In the days that followed, they were able to talk to each other much better. Tyler talked to Ash about everything from how the ship worked to the stories he had from his salvage jobs. He even complained about the red tape he had to deal with when he sold scrap. Ash listened to everything and sometimes answered through the translation pad or with gestures that Tyler was learning to understand. The creature had a great memory. Ash would remember everything Tyler said the first time he said it. While Tyler was fixing things, Ash started to guess what he would need next and gave him tools before he asked for them. The Vrykal learned where things went, how different systems work together, and even some basic engineering principles just by watching and listening. Tyler was eating dinner in the cargo hold one night. He had started doing this because he thought it was wrong to leave Ash alone all the time. He was talking about how hyperspace drives worked and using his hands to show how space could be folded. Ash suddenly got very excited and made loud rumbling noises while quickly choosing symbols on the translation pad. Tyler had to think for a second to keep up with the fast pace, but Ash was saying that the people of his country understood this idea. The Vrykal didn't make the technology themselves, but they did understand the theory behind it. They had been looking at the night sky and trying to figure out how to get to the stars. Tyler said softly, "You were so close. You might have figured it out on your own in another 100 years or so. But the collective didn't want to wait. They wanted the resources of your world right now." Tyler had never seen Ash use that symbol before. Theft was the closest translation. Not just of resources but of the future. Of chance. Of the chance to grow into something better. Tyler spent more and more time in the cargo hold, treating Ash less like a rescued animal and more like a friend. They came up with their own way to talk to each other that used gestures, symbols, and sounds that both of them understood. When Tyler said something funny, Ash would make a rumble that meant he was having fun. Tyler found out that when Ash's ears were tilted forward, it meant he was interested, and when they were tilted back, it meant he was worried. But Tyler was becoming more and more aware of a problem that was getting worse. Ash was getting better and stronger every day. The creature would eventually get better. What now? Tyler couldn't keep Ash a secret on his ship for long. The bounty networks in the outer fringe were always busy, and news of the missing cargo on the Kravik's ship had already spread. Someone would eventually figure out that Tyler had been in the area when the mercenaries went missing. One night, Tyler said what was bothering him out loud. "You know we can't run forever. Someone is going to find us eventually. The Kravik's company that hired those mercenaries will want their money back. And every bounty hunter in 3 sectors would love to get the reward for bringing you in." Ash picked out symbols slowly and carefully. "Then we fight. Against the whole galaxy? That's a death sentence. Better to die in chains." Tyler couldn't disagree with that line of thought. He leaned back against the bulkhead and thought about how impossible their situation was. A human salvage operator and the last living member of a species that is no longer around. Corporations and governments with almost unlimited resources are after them. "Hey, guess what?" Finally, Tyler said. "Maybe we don't run. We might do something that no one sees coming." Ash's 6 eyes were fixed on him. "Maybe we fight back. Not with guns but with the truth. People in the galaxy think your people were monsters because that's what they were told. But what if we could tell them the truth about what happened? What if we could show that the extinction was caused by greed and not safety?" For a long time, Ash was quiet before choosing one symbol. "How?" Tyler smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "I know some people. People who don't really like the collective. People who might be willing to help if we can give them a good reason." It was insane. It was probably going to get them both killed. But sitting here waiting for bounty hunters to eventually find them seemed even worse. "All right," Tyler said, standing up and heading for the bridge. "Let's see about building ourselves a pack." Tyler knew their time was running out when his ship's long-range scanners started picking up strange traffic patterns in the area. There were too many ships moving in grid search patterns, which meant that someone was looking for something specific. He had been in this business long enough to know when someone was hunting. He docked at a refueling station on the edge of the fringe. It was a rundown collection of platforms and storage tanks that served salvagers, smugglers, and anyone else who wanted to stay out of the collective's sight. People who lived there called it the Rust Bucket, but the place's name was Haven's Rest. Tyler had been coming here for years because the owner didn't ask questions and took payment in credit chips that couldn't be traced. It was a simple plan: refuel, get more supplies, and get back into deep space before anyone noticed them. But plans had a strange way of falling apart at the worst times. Tyler was checking the drifter's hope when his proximity alarm went off. A ship had just docked at the next berth without asking for permission or sending out any identification codes. That was the first sign of trouble. The second time was when his security cameras saw 3 armored figures moving through the connection tube toward his airlock. Tyler yelled, "Ash," into the ship's intercom. "We have guests. Stay quiet and stay in the cargo hold." Tyler had learned that a low rumble through the speaker system meant yes. He took his plasma pistol out of its holster and walked toward the airlock, his mind racing with possibilities. Maybe these were just aggressive thieves trying to steal his gas. Maybe the security guards at the station were shaking him down for bribes. It could have been something worse. Tyler got his answer when the airlock hissed open. 3 Zelkan mercenaries pushed their way through, their reptilian faces twisted into predatory grins. People in the fringe knew that Zelkans were some of the meanest bounty hunters around. Not only did they kill their targets, they also liked to make the experience as bad as possible. The leader, a huge Zelkan with scarred green scales and cybernetic parts on half of his face, aimed a heavy plasma rifle at Tyler's chest. "Tyler Reed. We were looking for you." "Can't imagine why," Tyler said, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was racing. "I'm just a salvager." "Not much." "Don't act dumb, human." The Kravik's mercantile group sent out a notice about their lost cargo. It looks like their ship went missing right around the time you were working in this area. Isn't that a funny coincidence? The 2 other Zelkans spread out in a way that was very precise, covering the hallway. These weren't just random thugs. They were professionals who had done this kind of work many times before. Tyler said, "I don't know anything about missing cargo. I take scrap metal off of dead ships. That's it." The leader's laugh sounded like rocks scraping against each other. "We looked at the abandoned building. I found your cutting marks on the airlock. I saw your boot prints inside. We found those restraints in the cargo bay and they were completely broken. Someone who knew how to work with technology stole something very valuable from that ship. Tyler's brain was working overtime to figure out how to deal with this without anyone dying. He couldn't get away because the Zelkins were in his way. Even if he could take out one or two of them, the third would shoot him with a plasma bolt before he could blink. The leader went on, "This is how it works. You're going to tell us where the Vrykal is, we're going to get our reward, and maybe we'll let you live. Maybe is the main point. And what if I don't have what you want? Then we take your ship apart piece by piece until we find it. I should say that the bounty is the same whether we bring it back alive or dead. So, how messy this gets really depends on how well you work with us." Tyler was about to say something when the lights in the hallway went out. The emergency lights came on a second later and cast a dim red glow over everything. The Zelkins got tense and swept their weapons through the dark. The leader asked, "What did you do?" "Nothing," Tyler said, and he meant it. He hadn't done anything. Then he heard it. A sound that made his blood run cold, even though he knew Ash wouldn't hurt him. It was a low, resonating growl that sounded like it came from all over the place and shook the ship's hull. The sound that made every prey instinct that evolution had hardwired into most species' brains go off. The Zelkins also heard it. Tyler saw fear flash across their faces before they tried to cover it up with professional bravado. "Spread out," the leader said. "Find it." That was their first error. As soon as they broke up, they lost their numerical edge. Over the past 2 weeks, Tyler learned a lot about Ash, like how the Vrykal hunted. They were ambush predators who were patient and planned, using shadows and the land to their advantage. The Zelkin on the left walked toward the door to the cargo bay. Tyler heard a quick rush of movement, a wet crunch, and then nothing. The mercenary's weapon fell to the deck, but the owner didn't say anything. The other 2 Zelkins turned to the noise, weapons in hand. "Stay together," the leader yelled, but his voice didn't sound as sure as it used to. Tyler fell to the floor as plasma fire lit up the hallway. The Zelkins were now shooting at shadows, and their bullets were leaving marks on the bulkheads and blowing out panels. But Ash was already gone, making its way through the maintenance crawlspaces that Tyler had shown it on their tours of the ship. The second Zelkin fell when the deck grating under him suddenly broke. Tyler realized that Ash had already loosened the bolts. The creature had been getting ready for this, knowing that their ship could turn into a battlefield. The mercenary fell into the maintenance level below with a scream that stopped suddenly. In the red-lit hallway, Tyler and the leader were now the only 2 people left. The Zelkin's rifle was still aimed at Tyler, but his eyes kept darting to the shadows, looking for threats he couldn't see. "Stop it," the leader said in a tight voice. "Stop your monster or I'll kill you right now." "First of all," Tyler said in a calm voice, "not a monster. Second, I couldn't stop Ash even if I wanted to. Third, you came onto my ship and said you would kill us both. So, in a way, this is self-defense." The leader's finger tightened on the trigger, but he never got to pull it. Ash fell from a maintenance hatch above and moved at an impossible speed for something so big. Tyler heard the sickening sound of bones breaking when the Zelkin's gun went flying. All 3 Zelkins were alive but unconscious when it was over. Tyler had told Ash not to kill unless it was absolutely necessary, and the Vrykal had kept that promise. The mercenaries would wake up with broken bones and hurt pride, but they would live. "We have to go," Tyler said as he walked toward the bridge. "Right now." But when he turned on the engines, his communication console lit up with signals coming in. A lot of them. It looks like the Zelkins told people where they were before they got on board, probably as a safety measure in case something went wrong. Now every mercenary, bounty hunter, and opportunist in 3 sectors knew exactly where to find them. Tyler opened the tactical display and felt his stomach drop. 27 ships were coming together at their location. Some were already breaking through the atmosphere on nearby moons, trying to be the first to get the prize. The Drifter's hope was a fast salvage ship, but there was no way they could get away from that many people chasing them. Ash came up on the bridge and moved carefully so he wouldn't hit the low ceiling. The Vrykal looked at the tactical display, and those 6 amber eyes quickly took in the information. It reached for the translation pad that Tyler had on the bridge console and picked a group of symbols. "Can't run forever. Need a new plan." Tyler stared at the screen as the red dots that stood for enemy ships got closer from all sides. Ash was correct. Running would only put off the inevitable. They needed something else, something that none of these hunters would expect. "You remember when I told you we should fight back with the truth instead of weapons?" Tyler asked. Ash rumbled in agreement. "I know some people who might be able to help. But we have to stay alive long enough to get to them first." Tyler planned a route that would take them through the most dangerous part of the fringe. This area was full of nebulas that messed up sensors and gravitational anomalies that made it hard to find their way. Most pilots stayed away from it because one wrong calculation could destroy a ship. "Wait a second," Tyler said, moving his hands quickly over the controls. This is going to be hard. The drifter's hope left the depot just as the first bounty hunters showed up. Tyler pushed the engines to their limits, and plasma fire lit up the area around them. The ship shook and groaned, but it stayed together as they flew into the nebula. Several ships that were following them tried to catch up. Tyler heard the emergency broadcasts as two of them crashed into gravitational eddies that they hadn't seen in time. The others backed off, realizing that no amount of money was worth dying for. Tyler, on the other hand, knew this was only a temporary safe place. They would have to leave the nebula at some point. The hunters would be ready when they did. They needed friends and they needed them right away. Tyler spent 3 days making his way through the dangerous space of the nebula before finally coming out on the other side, far from where the bounty hunters were looking for him. But he knew they wouldn't have much time to breathe. Word was getting around quickly on all the outer fringes communication channels. The bounty on Ash's head had gone up from a few 100,000 credits to more than 2 million. Half of the galaxy would be looking for them at that price. He couldn't do it by himself anymore. Tyler needed people he could trust, but that was a short list in his line of work. But there were 3 people who owed him favors and, more importantly, 3 people who had their own reasons to hate the collective and its business partners. Vanessa Cole, a scientist who had been kicked out of collective space 5 years ago, was the first. Tyler had met her at a black market technology fair where she was selling research tools she had stolen when the police came to get her. She had been one of the top researchers looking into extinct species, but she made the mistake of publishing a paper that questioned the official story about the Vrykal extermination, which ended her career. The collective called her a conspiracy theorist and ruined her reputation. Tyler last heard that she was in charge of a small research station on an independent colony world called Meridian's Edge. The second was Danny Park, a Threxian pilot who lost everything when corporate raiders destroyed his family's mining business. The raiders worked for one of the same megacorporations that had made money from the resources on the Vrykal homeworld. Danny had promised to get back at them, but he quickly realized that one pilot couldn't take down a company that spanned the universe. Instead, he became a smuggler, using his amazing flying skills to move illegal goods and sometimes even mess up shipments for businesses. Tyler had saved Danny's life once when a salvage operation went wrong, and the Threxian had promised to do the same for him one day. The third was Lisa Grant, a former officer in the Colonial Defense Force who had gone AWOL instead of following orders she thought were wrong. She was in charge of a peacekeeping unit that had to move civilians against their will so that a company could get to mineral deposits on their land. The CDF called Lisa a traitor when she refused and instead helped the civilians get away. She had been living under a number of fake names since then, doing mercenary work that let her sleep at night. She trusted Tyler because he had worked with her brother in the past. It took some creative thinking to get in touch with all 3 of them without using channels that could be watched. Tyler used old-fashioned dead drops, encrypted messages hidden in public data streams, and a series of coded signals that would look like random noise to anyone who wasn't looking for them. He told them all the same thing. Come to the old mining site on Kepler Station, come alone, and bring any weapons you can spare. He didn't say anything about Ash. Not yet. That talk needed to happen in person. 30 years ago, Kepler Station was a busy mining operation. But the company that owned it took everything of value and left the station instead of paying to properly shut it down. It was now just a hollowed-out asteroid with life support systems that barely worked and docking bays that hadn't seen real traffic in decades. Great for a private meeting. Tyler got there first and parked the Drifter's Hope in one of the old cargo bays. Then he ran a full diagnostic on his security systems. Ash stayed in the cargo hold the whole time they were traveling, reading about human history, politics, and society that Tyler had downloaded. The Vrykal learned very quickly, and Tyler thought it might know more about what's going on in the galaxy than most college graduates. Vanessa came 6 hours later, driving a small research ship that looked like it had been put together from spare parts. She was in her mid-40s, had gray hair pulled back into a useful ponytail, and wore a stained lab coat over useful work clothes. Tyler hadn't seen her in a while, and she had new lines around her eyes that showed she had been stressed and not sleeping well. She said, "This better be good read," as she got on the Drifter. "I was doing important research when I got your strange message." Tyler said, "It's good. But you have to see it to believe it." Next came Danny, whose modified scout ship docked with the kind of precision that made Tyler jealous. The Threxian was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and a forehead that was ridged, which is a trait of his species. It was pretty normal for him to have enough weapons to arm a small army. "Hey, did you know that there's a 2 million credit bounty on someone in this area?" Danny said hello. "All the hunters from here to the core are looking for what the Kroviks lost. I hope you're not going to do anything dumb. Define stupid, Tyler said with a small smile. Lisa was the last to arrive and she came in hot, her ship's engine still cooling as she ran up the docking ramp with a rifle in her hands. She was small and muscular, with short dark hair and a posture that showed she had been in the military for a long time. In just a few seconds her eyes scanned the bay, noting exits and possible threats. Are we being followed? She asked right away. Tyler said, not that I can see. But I've been wrong before. Tyler brought them all together in the common area once all three were on board. They stood in an awkward triangle, obviously wondering why Tyler had called them all there and what he could possibly need from all of them at once. Tyler said, before I tell you why you're here, I need to tell you a story. 3 weeks ago I was trying to save a Kravix warship that had been abandoned. I found something inside that shouldn't be there. Something the collective said was no longer alive. Vanessa's eyes got big. You didn't. I did. Tyler, what the hell are you talking about? Danny asked. Tyler turned on the intercom instead of answering. Ash, you can come out now. The door to the cargo hold opened with a hiss of hydraulics. Nothing happened for a while. Then Ash stepped through, bending down to fit through the door. 12 feet of black fur, corded muscle, and 6 glowing amber eyes that looked around the room with clear intelligence. Danny's hand went to his gun. Lisa raised her rifle halfway before she realized what she was doing. Vanessa stood there with her mouth open in shock. Tyler said in a calm voice, everyone meet Ash. Ash, these are the people I told you about. Vanessa whispered, that's a Vrykal. That's a real Vrykal. Oh my god, the things I could learn, the research I could do, the proof that they weren't the monsters everyone said they were. Danny said flatly, it's going to kill us all, even though he hadn't pulled out his gun yet. Lisa kept her rifle ready but not quite aimed. You better have a damn good reason for this, Tyler. Tyler then explained. He told them everything, how he found Ash chained up and dying in the abandoned building, how he decided to free it, how he spent weeks nursing it back to health, how he learned to talk to it, and how he found out the truth about the Vrykal extinction. He showed them the secret files he had gotten into, which showed that corporations had made money by committing genocide. He showed how Ash used the translation pad, how it could understand complicated ideas, and how it had fought the Zelkan mercenaries without killing them, even though it had every reason and chance to do so. Ash stayed still the whole time he was talking, letting his actions speak louder than the words he couldn't say. It didn't act threateningly or aggressively, it just watched the 3 new people with interest. Vanessa was the first to come up, even though she was worried about what would happen. Can I? She asked, pointing to Ash. Ash chose symbols on the translation pad that it had brought with it from the cargo hold. Yes. Welcome to study. Want the truth to come out. It can talk, Vanessa said with a sigh. Real communication, not just rehearsed answers. This changes everything we thought we knew. Danny still looked doubtful, but he had calmed down a little. So what's the plan here, Tyler? You didn't bring us here just to show off your new pet. Tyler said firmly, Ash isn't a pet. And the play is easy. We're going to show what the collective did. We will show that the Vrykal extermination was not a necessary security measure, but rather genocide for profit. We're going to tell the galaxy the truth. Lisa said bluntly, that's suicide. The collective doesn't forgive people who tell their dirty secrets. Every government and business in known space would want to kill us. Tyler said, we're already marked. There's a 2 million credit bounty on Ash's head. Every hunter in 3 areas is looking for us. Running away and hiding will only delay the inevitable. But if we can get the truth out there and broadcast it on every major system at the same time, maybe we will be too well known to just disappear quietly. Maybe we make the galaxy face what happened. Vanessa was nodding with excitement. I still know people in the scientific community. People who didn't believe the official story but were too scared to say anything. They would help spread it if we had real, documented proof. Danny added slowly, I know some hackers who could get around collective communication security. If we're really going to do this crazy thing. Lisa looked at Ash for a long time before putting her gun down. I left the CDF because I was sick of following orders that were wrong. Tired of being in a system that put profits ahead of people. Count me in if we're going to fight back against that system. Ash watched this back and forth, his 6 eyes moving from one person to the next. Then it chose a sequence on the translation pad that Tyler had to think about for a moment. Pack. All together. Stronger. Something that had been tight in Tyler's chest let go. They were no longer alone. The team spent the next week at Kepler Station, where they turned the old mining facility into a makeshift operations center. Vanessa set up her research tools in what used to be the station's lab, and Danny worked on making the drifters' security systems better. Lisa set up defensive positions all over the building and patrolled them regularly to make sure no one was following them. Tyler was in charge of everything, but he was becoming more and more aware that being a leader had never been his strong suit. Ash helped out in any way he could, and it turned out to be more than anyone thought. The Vrykal was strong enough to move heavy equipment easily, but what surprised me even more was that it was good at understanding technical systems. Vanessa thought that the Vrykal species must have had some natural ability to think about space and recognize patterns. These skills would have helped them as hunters and might have even led to technological progress if they had been given the chance. But the real work was done in Vanessa's makeshift lab. She had brought with her years of research on the extinction of the Vrykal, including copies of files she had downloaded before being exiled. Tyler had the classified documents he got illegally. They began to put together a picture of what had really happened 30 years ago. The official story that everyone had been told was simple. The Vrykal were violent top predators who had started attacking collective survey teams that were looking into their system. The collective had to use military force to protect its people when diplomatic efforts failed. The orbital bombardment was called a sad but necessary response to a threat to life. But the secret files told a completely different story. Vanessa opened a file that was dated 6 months before the first supposed Vrykal attack. It was an internal memo from the Collective Resource Allocation Committee that talked about the huge Ethereum deposits found on the Vrykal homeworld. "Look at this," Vanessa said, her voice full of anger. They knew exactly how important that planet was. They thought that the Ethereum reserves could power travel faster than light for the whole collective for more than 200 years. That's a lot of money that most people can't even imagine. Tyler read the paper while leaning over her shoulder. So they went to the Vrykal to ask for mining rights? Yes, these records say so. But the Vrykal said no. It seems that their culture had strong spiritual ties to their home world. They thought of the land itself as holy, not something to be cut up for resources. The collective negotiators tried to explain the benefits of joining the galactic community and offered trade and technology deals, but the Vrykal weren't interested. Lisa, who was cleaning her rifle nearby, said, "So the collective decided to take it by force." "Not right away," Vanessa said as she opened another file. "First they tried to put pressure on the economy, and then they tried to cut off political ties. But the Vrykal didn't have an economy that spanned the stars to mess up, and they weren't members of any galactic groups that could kick them out. They were completely self-sufficient on their own world." Danny had joined them now, and his blue-gray face twisted in disgust as he read the papers. "Let me guess. That's when the fake flag operations began?" Vanessa nodded sadly. "That's right. These files explain a secret operation known as Project Clearance. The collective sent in special forces that looked like survey teams. Those teams started fights with the Vrykal on purpose and then showed edited videos that made it look like the Vrykal attacked them for no reason. They set up 3 different events over the course of 4 months. Tyler got sick reading the reports on how things were going. The people who planned each event had carefully planned them to make the public the most angry. The third incident involved the collective operatives killing their own people on purpose to make it look like the Vrykal were bloodthirsty monsters. Vanessa said quietly, "People's opinions changed quickly after that. People were scared. The news kept running stories about the Vrykal threat. Politicians tried to sound the toughest on security. The Collective Council gave the go-ahead for military action within 2 months. And the Vrykal never saw it coming," Lisa said. "They didn't have space travel. No defenses in space. No way to stop warships from bombing them from space." Ash had been watching this whole conversation from the corner where it was sitting, and following the translation of what they said on a second screen that Tyler had set up. The Vrykal now came closer to the main screen, its 6 eyes carefully examining the papers. Vanessa pulled up video of the bombing, but she hesitated before playing it. "Ash, you should know that this will be hard to watch. This is what happened to your home world." Ash chose symbols on its pad. "Need to see. Need to know." The video was taken by military gun cameras and shows the Vrykal homeworld from space. It was a beautiful planet with huge forests and clear oceans. The video showed the first wave of kinetic bombardment strikes, which were huge projectiles dropped from space that hit with the force of nuclear weapons. In seconds, whole forests turned to gas. The oceans boiled away. The air itself started to catch fire. Tyler looked at Ash's face in the dark screen. The Vrykal's body was completely still and all of its muscles were tense. It was breathing quickly and shallowly. He couldn't even begin to imagine how it felt to watch your whole species being wiped out one by one. The timestamp said that the bombing had gone on for 3 days. The surface of the planet was a burned-out wasteland by the end. That was too much for anything to live through. The collective said they had completely succeeded and that the Vrykal threat had been stopped. But some made it through, Tyler said softly. Ash's group. Others who were not on Earth or were in deep shelters. Vanessa opened up more files. The collective spent the next 5 years looking for survivors. They offered rewards, hired mercenaries, and used every resource they had. These files say that after the bombing they killed another 12,000 Vrykal. The official statements to the public said they were only getting rid of the last threats. The private notes praised each kill as one less potential witness. Witnesses to genocide, Danny said with anger. Lisa had stopped cleaning her gun and was staring at the screen with rage. I knew the collective was up to no good. That's why I went. But this is the planned killing of an entire species for money. It's hard to understand how evil this is. After a long time, Ash finally moved and picked a long string of symbols on his translation pad. Everyone had to think about the message for a minute. My group. We all left and there were 37 of us. Hid in the deep dark, a place where ships can't go. Lived there for 15 years. Kravix found us 6 months ago. They killed everyone but me. I am the last one. Only I am left to remember. It felt like the weight of that statement filled the room. Ash wasn't the only one in its pack. There was a chance that it was the last living Vrykal in the whole galaxy. The last living member of a species, with the memories of billions of dead. Tyler's hands were in fists. This can't stay hidden. The galaxy needs to know what happened. Agreed, Vanessa said, her voice shaking with emotion. But we need to be careful about how we let this out. People will think the files are fake if we just put them on a conspiracy theory website. We need to be believable. We need to get the information from more than one source. I know people in the underground news networks, Danny said. Journalists who the collective has put on a blacklist for asking questions that make people uncomfortable. They would love a story this big and they would check the sources carefully. Lisa said, that's a start but not enough. We need this broadcast to go out to everyone at once. Every important system, every place where people talk to each other, and every stream of public data. Make it impossible to hide or spin. Tyler thought about how things would work. We'd need access to a collective communication relay to do that. Those things are locked up tighter than the most secure prisons. Multiple layers of encryption, biometric security, armed guards, and more. So we break into one, Danny said with a shrug as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Get into a collective comm hub? Lisa raised an eyebrow. That's not just hard, it's almost impossible. Borderline isn't the same as completely impossible, Danny said. I've gotten illegal things through collective security before. If you know where to look, their systems have flaws. Vanessa was already looking at blueprints on her screen. The nearest hub is Station Praxis, which orbits the gas giant Helios Prime. It is a major relay point that handles communications for almost 30 systems. We could send a message to hundreds of billions of people at once if we could get to its central transmitter. Tyler looked over the blueprints, using his salvager's eye to find possible ways in and weak spots in the security. Lisa was right, but it would be very dangerous. They needed to be seen by as many people as possible at once. If you give the collective time to respond, they will shut down the story before it can spread. Tyler said, we need a good plan. Several contingencies. And we'd have to be okay with the fact that some of us might not make it. Everyone knew that the sound of Ash rumbling meant determination. It chose symbols on the pad that said, risk acceptable. Truth is more important than safety. My people deserve the truth. Galaxy deserves the truth. Lisa looked into Ash's six-eyed gaze and nodded slowly. The Vrykal is braver than most people I know. I'm in. Vanessa said right away, me too. Danny said, oh what the hell. I've always wanted to be remembered as either a hero or a famous criminal. This looks like a good way to get one or both. Tyler looked at the crew he had put together. A disgraced scientist, a smuggler who has nothing to lose, a soldier who is AWOL, and the last member of a species that is no longer alive. Not the best group of people to take on the most powerful government in the galaxy. But they were all they had. Tyler thought that sometimes the biggest changes came from the most unlikely places. Okay then, he said. Let's figure out how to break into a collective communication hub and reveal the biggest cover-up in the history of the galaxy. How hard could it be? It took 2 weeks of careful planning to get ready for the infiltration of Station Praxis. Danny had gotten blueprints from his smuggling contacts, but he even said they might be out of date. Vanessa spent days going over the station's security rules, looking for any holes in their systems that she could use. Lisa made everyone practice combat tactics and emergency procedures over and over again until Tyler could do them in his sleep. The hardest part was deciding what to do with Ash. A 12-foot Vrykal wasn't exactly hard to see, and the whole point was to stay hidden until they had uploaded the files. But Ash wouldn't stay behind, and Tyler didn't want to leave their best fighter out of the action. They finally came to an agreement. Ash would go in through the maintenance areas, which are designed for automated repair drones and where a big figure wouldn't set off alarms right away. The way to Station Praxis had to look completely normal. Danny showed them how to use a stolen transponder code that showed that the Drifter's Hope was a supply ship bringing parts to fix the station's life support systems. It was a routine delivery that happened a few times a week and was so boring that security wouldn't pay much attention. Tyler's hands were sweaty as they went through the outer defense line. Automated weapons platforms kept an eye on their approach and were ready to turn them into dust if anything seemed off. The seconds felt like hours until they finally got the go-ahead to dock at Bay 7. "Okay, we're in," Danny said quietly, but his shoulders were tense. "We're at least through the first layer." They docked without any problems. Tyler and Lisa got off the ship dressed as maintenance workers, with toolboxes that hid their real tools. Vanessa stayed on the ship and set up her hacking station so she could get past the station's cyber defenses when they got to the central relay. As they got closer, Ash had already left through an external airlock. He used magnetic grips to crawl along the station's outer hull to get to a maintenance access port. The Vrykal moved with surprising grace for something so big. Its natural hunting instincts worked perfectly in zero gravity. The inside of Station Praxis was all white, sterile hallways and holographic displays that flickered to show the flow of communication traffic through the hub. There were hundreds of people who worked here, including civilian technicians and collective security personnel who kept the systems that connected dozens of star systems running. Tyler and Lisa walked through the halls trying to look bored and professional, like they were just two more maintenance workers on a routine service call. They got 3 levels down before the first problem came up. A security checkpoint they didn't know about, probably put in place after Danny made the plans. 2 guards in collective armor stood next to a scanning arch that would definitely find the weapons and hacking tools they had hidden in their toolboxes. Lisa caught Tyler's eye and nodded slightly. She walked up to the guards with a big smile and pulled out a work order from her data pad. "Hey, we're here to look at some broken relays in Section 12. Should already be in your system." The first guard checked her credentials and Lisa stumbled a little, bumping into the second guard and dropping her toolbox. There were tools all over the floor and both guards instinctively bent down to help pick them up. That's when Lisa moved. Her hand shot out to hit pressure points, knocking both guards out in just a few seconds. Lisa said, "We have maybe 2 minutes before someone notices they're not responding to check-ins." She dragged the bodies into a supply closet nearby. They moved faster now that they knew their time was running out. Tyler's earpiece crackled as Vanessa said, "I'm hearing more security talk on their internal channels. I can't tell if it's because of us, but they're acting nervous." "Hey Ash, did you get that?" Tyler spoke softly into his comm. The answer was a low rumble that their translation software turned into "understood." Going slowly. They got to the server room, which had the access terminals for the main relay. While Tyler started to pick the electronic locks, Lisa kept an eye on him. He moved his hands quickly through the security interface, using tricks he'd learned from years of breaking into ships that were no longer in use. These locks were more advanced, but they worked in the same way. They slipped inside when the door hissed open. There were rows of humming servers in the room, and their lights blinked in complicated patterns as they handled communication traffic from all over the sector. Tyler found a terminal and plugged in his data pad, which let Vanessa access the system from afar. Vanessa's voice said, "I'm in. Now starting the upload sequence. It will take at least 5 minutes for all the files to move and spread through the network." That's when the alarms started to go off. There were red emergency lights all over the hallways outside. Heavy boots stomped toward them. Someone had figured out that they didn't belong here, probably when the guards who were sleeping missed their check-in. "We have visitors." Lisa yelled and stood at the door with her rifle raised. The first security team turned the corner, and Lisa opened fire, hitting her targets with deadly accuracy. She aimed for arms and armor plating, trying to disable them instead of kill them. These people were just doing their jobs. They weren't the ones who planned the genocide. But more teams were coming, and their tactical coordination made it clear that they were now dealing with professionals, not just station security. "Vanessa, how long?" Tyler asked. 3 minutes. The system is fighting me by putting up new security walls as soon as I break them. Tyler heard a new voice on the security channel. It was cold and commanding. "This is Commander Thale. All units meet in server room 4. We have people trying to get into secret systems. Use of deadly force is allowed." Tyler felt a chill run down his spine when he heard the name. Those secret files had information about Commander Thale that he had read. He had personally led the hunt for Vrykal survivors after the bombing, treating it like a game. He had been given an award for his work on the extinction effort. More police officers came into the hallway. Lisa was barely able to hold them back. She ducked behind cover as plasma fire burned the air where her head had been a second before. "We're not going to last 3 minutes," she yelled. That's when the roof blew up. Ash fell into the hallway like a nightmare come to life, scattering security guards like bowling pins. The Vrykal moved with terrifying speed, taking out weapons and incapacitating people without killing them. It had 6 eyes that could see many threats at once, and its faster reflexes let it dodge plasma fire that would have killed a person. At the end of the hall, Commander Thale stood with a full tactical squad in heavy armor on either side of him. He was thin, had silver hair, and cold eyes that made it look like he liked his job. He opened his eyes wide when he saw Ash. "Not possible," Thale said. "They're gone. We made sure of it." Tyler yelled, "You tried. But you didn't do it. And now everyone will know what you did." Thale's face twisted with anger. "Kill it. Get rid of them all. None of this can leave this station." The tactical squad fired all of their weapons. Ash hid behind a support pillar that was never meant to take that kind of damage. Lisa shot back, but they were being pushed back into the server room. 2 minutes. Vanessa's voice was strained. "The upload is almost done, but if they turn off the power to this part, we lose everything." Tyler looked at the terminal, then at Ash, who had a lot of plasma burns and was bleeding, and then at Lisa, who was down to her last power pack. They weren't going to get there. Even if the upload finished, Thale's men would shoot them down before they could get away. Unless someone gave them something else to worry about. Tyler opened the station's environmental controls on his datapad. They were out of options, so they made a desperate move that put everyone at risk. He typed commands into the interface with lightning speed that would start an emergency oxygen purge in this whole area. "Everyone seal your suits," Tyler yelled. "Now." He pressed the button to run. As the atmospheric system started to let air out into space, alarms went off. The blast doors started to close on their own in an effort to keep the breach contained. Thale's tactical team, who weren't ready for this crazy move, rushed to get their emergency respirators. In the middle of the chaos, Vanessa's voice rang out with joy. "Upload complete. The files are being sent out on all 32 systems channels. Now they can't stop it." Tyler grabbed Lisa and they ran to the maintenance shaft where Ash had gone in. The Vrykal was already moving because it knew what Tyler was going to do. As the station's emergency systems went crazy behind them, they crawled through tight spaces. They came out on the outside of the hull, where Danny had put the Drifter's Hope in place for an emergency pickup. The 4 of them ran through the airlock just as the station's security forces got back on their feet and started to chase them. "Go, go, go," Tyler yelled. Danny didn't need to hear it twice. The engines of the ship roared to life, and they sped away from Station Praxis as fast as they could. Bullets flew through the area they had just been in, but Danny's flying was too good. He moved through the defensive perimeter with the kind of skill that comes from years of running away from customs agents. Tyler pulled up the communication feeds as they jumped into hyperspace. The files were everywhere, spreading like wildfire across the galactic network. The story was getting picked up by news outlets. Independent reporters were checking the papers. People on social media were shocked, angry, and in disbelief. There was no way to hide or spin the truth now. At last, the galaxy was learning the truth about what had happened to the Vrykal people. Tyler looked at Ash, who was hurt and tired but still alive. He was leaning against the bulkhead. The 6 eyes of the Vrykal met Tyler's, and he thought he saw something that could have been hope. They had done it. They had really done it, even though the odds were against them. Now they just had to deal with what happened. There was chaos on a galactic scale for the first 48 hours after the broadcast. Tyler watched the news feeds from the Drifter's Hope as they moved from system to system, never staying in one place long enough for anyone to find them. People were downloading the files billions of times an hour, and they were spreading to every inhabited world in collective space and beyond. At first, major news networks tried to ignore the story or say it was fake, but independent journalists were already checking the documents. The encryption signatures were in line with military protocols. The timestamps on the communications matched up with historical records. The metadata on the video showed that it was real. Even the most popular news outlets couldn't pretend the evidence wasn't real within 24 hours. Tyler sat in the common area with his strange group and watched as a well-known news anchor explained the timeline of the Vrykal extinction on live TV. As the woman talked about the false flag operations, the fake crisis, and the planned killing of an entire species to get to mineral resources. Her voice shook. 30 years, the anchor said, looking straight into the camera. For 30 years, we've been told that the Vrykal were monsters who left us with no choice. We were taught that their extinction was sad but necessary. And now we know it was murder. Genocide that was planned and carried out by the same group that says it stands for civilized values. People's reactions were following predictable patterns. Collective loyalists said the papers were enemy propaganda, but they couldn't say who would gain from such a detailed fake. Corporate interests tried to shift blame by saying they had only bought legal mining rights and weren't responsible for how those rights were obtained. But millions of regular people were going through something Tyler had been through himself. The sickening realization that they had been lied to about something very important. Protests broke out on many worlds. 50,000 people marched on the Collective's administrative center on the human colony of New Terra, demanding answers. The Zelkan homeworld, where mercenaries made a lot of money hunting down the last Vrykal, saw riots as younger people turned against their elders for being involved. Some species that were part of the Collective were even threatening to leave the Alliance if there wasn't full accountability. But the backlash was just as strong. The Collective Council put out an emergency statement saying that the leaked documents were security-compromised material taken out of context by terrorists seeking to undermine galactic stability. They said that Tyler Reed, Vanessa Cole, Danny Park, and Lisa Grant were wanted for spying, terrorism, and stealing secret information. There was now a 3 million credit bounty on each member of the crew and a 5 million credit bounty on Ash's head. Danny said, "We're the most wanted people in the galaxy," as he watched the bounty notices go by on the screen. "That's actually pretty cool." "That's a death sentence," Lisa said. "Every hunter, mercenary, and person in need of money is going to be looking for us. Plus, there are Black Ops teams from the Collective who don't care about keeping us alive." Tyler knew she was correct. They had been jumping through hyperspace all the time, changing course at random to avoid patterns, but it was only a matter of time before someone got lucky. The Drifters' hope was running low on fuel, and they couldn't risk docking at any real station. At this price, even the black market stations would be too risky right now. Since the heist, Ash had been quiet because he was healing from the plasma burns he got while escaping. Vanessa had done her best to care for the wounds, but the Vrykal was clearly in pain. It spent most of its time watching the news feeds to see how the galaxy reacted to the story of its people. One night, Tyler found Ash in the cargo hold watching a video of protesters holding signs that said, "Justice for the Vrykal." Based on pictures found in the classified files, some of the signs showed artistic recreations of what the Vrykal homeworld might have looked like before the bombardment. Tyler sat down next to the huge creature and said, "People are listening. They're mad. They want things to be different." Ash slowly picked out symbols on the translation pad, as if each one took a lot of work. "Anger not same as justice. Words don't mean the same thing as actions. My people are still dead. I'm still alone." That wasn't a good answer for Tyler. Ash was correct. People were angry, but it didn't bring back billions of dead people. It didn't take back 3 decades of lies. And it didn't change the fact that Ash might be the last living Vrykal in the world. Alarms going off all over the ship interrupted their talk. Danny's voice came through the intercom with a crackle. "There are a lot of ships dropping out of hyperspace around us. It's a trap." Tyler and Ash ran to the bridge. The tactical display showed 8 ships in a coordinated formation around them. These weren't just random bounty hunters. This was a planned military operation. A group of people probably sent a strike team to kill the witnesses before they could do any more harm. "Can we leap? Can we jump?" Tyler said. Danny said, "Hyperspace drive needs 3 more minutes to charge." He was trying to steer with his hands flying over the controls. "We're not going to have 3 minutes. Gunfire lit up the area around them. The Drifters' hope shook as bullets hit their shields, which weren't made to withstand this kind of constant attack. Danny pushed the engines to their limits and dodged the attack patterns, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "Shields at 40%, Vanessa said from the engineering station. "We can't take much more of this." Lisa was already at the weapons console, firing back, but their salvage ship didn't have as many weapons as military strike craft. If they were lucky, they might be able to take down 1 or 2 attackers, but not all 8. Tyler looked at the tactical display, and his mind raced through choices that weren't real. This was it. They had told the truth, but they weren't going to live to see what happened next. At least they had to work for this kill instead of just dying quietly in a dark corner of space. Then something strange happened. There were new contacts on the scanner, and ships were dropping out of hyperspace between the Drifter and the strike team. A completely uncoordinated fleet of civilian transports, private boats, and even a few old military surplus ships that had been turned into commercial ships. What the hell? Danny mumbled something as he looked at the screen. Messages started coming in through the communication channels. Tyler opened the first one and saw the weathered face of a freighter captain. She was probably in her 60s, had steel gray hair, and a determined look on her face that made it clear she had made up her mind about something important. The woman said, "This is Captain Rodriguez of the independent freighter Stellar Wind. We saw you let those files go. We saw the truth, you put everything on the line to show us. The collective can't make all of us go away though. Stand down, strike team, or you'll have to fight through all of us to get to them." More ships joined in, with captains and pilots from all over the sector saying they wouldn't stand by while those who had exposed genocide were hunted down. Some were idealists who thought that justice was important. Some people were just sick of being controlled by the collective. A few said they were here because they had always thought something was wrong with the official Vrykal story and now they had proof. The commander of the strike team tried to tell the civilian ships to leave, saying it was against security rules and threatening to call them hostile. But there were too many of them, and shooting at dozens of civilian ships would only show that the protesters were right about how cruel people are in groups. The strike team left after a tense standoff that lasted almost 10 minutes. They couldn't finish their job without killing a lot of people and having it be shown on every news network in the galaxy. Captain Rodriguez called out to the drifter again as the military ships sped away. "You guys need a safe place to stay for a while. We have a convoy going to the Outer Rim's independent colonies. Collective doesn't have any power out there, and the local governments are on your side. You're welcome to come with us." Tyler felt something he hadn't felt in weeks: hope. "That would be great, Captain. A lot more than you think." The convoy formed around them, with almost 60 ships of different sizes making a protective circle. Vanessa opened the latest news feeds as they got ready to jump to hyperspace together. The story had reached a tipping point. 3 members of the collective council had to quit because of pressure. Younger citizens were calling for accountability for their species' role in the genocide, which could have led to a revolution in the Zelkan government. Independent worlds were holding emergency votes to decide if they should stay in the collective at all. More importantly, scientists and researchers who had been quiet were now speaking out. Vanessa's former co-workers were coming forward with their own proof that the collective had hidden research and destroyed data that went against the official story. The truth was getting too heavy to ignore. "It's working," Vanessa said, her voice full of surprise. "The galaxy is really reacting. This could really make a difference." Ash watched all of this with its 6 amber eyes, taking in how the galaxy reacted to the story of its people. Finally, it chose a message on the translation pad that said, "I can't bring my people back. But maybe their deaths will mean something. Perhaps their memory will change the future." Tyler put a hand on Ash's shoulder and felt the strong muscles under the black fur. "People won't forget about your people. I promise you that. No matter what happens, we'll make sure the truth stays out there." Outside the viewport, the convoy jumped to hyperspace together, a motley group of regular people who had decided that some things were worth fighting for. The convoy took them to Haven's Reach, a group of independent colony worlds that had broken away from the collective's control 20 years before. The people there treated them like heroes, but Tyler had never felt less like a hero. They had told the truth, but the price of that truth was still being counted all over the galaxy. The movement that began with their broadcast had grown into something much bigger than any of them had thought it would. The collective was falling apart from the inside as its members called for investigations and accountability. 2 whole planetary governments had broken away, saying they didn't want to be a part of an organization based on lies and genocide. Corporate leaders were being called to court. Military officers who had been involved in the Vrykal extinction were being charged with crimes. Tyler didn't care about all of that political turmoil because he was watching Ash get worse and worse every day. The plasma burns from Station Praxis hadn't healed well, and Vanessa's medical scans showed something worse underneath. Ash's internal organs were failing because of years of torture and captivity that even the Vrykal's amazing healing couldn't fix. "How long?" Tyler asked Vanessa quietly one night while Ash was sleeping. Vanessa wouldn't look him in the eye. "Weeks. For lucky, maybe a couple of months. The damage is too bad. I'm not sure it would make a difference even if we had access to the best medical facilities in the collective, which we don't. Ash's body has been through a lot." Tyler felt something snap inside of him. They had come so far, been through so much, and uncovered the biggest cover-up in the history of the galaxy. And for what? So Ash could die anyway, but it would be a little later and with a little more dignity than bleeding to death in chains on a broken ship? He spent that night looking into every available medical technology, getting in touch with experts through secure channels, and even talking to some of Vanessa's old co-workers who were now publicly talking about the Vrykol. Everyone told him the same thing: there was nothing they could do. The damage was just too bad. Of course Ash knew. The Vrykol probably knew for weeks but didn't say anything. Tyler finally got the nerve to talk about it, and Ash's response on the translation pad was typical. All living things die. I agree with this. How we live before we die is what matters. Tyler said, "That's not good enough," in a rough voice. "We didn't do all this to see you die. You did this for the truth. For the sake of justice. In memory of my people. That job is finished. I die free with a purpose and with my pack. A lot of people like me died without any of these things. I am lucky." Tyler wanted to fight and say that there had to be a solution they hadn't thought of yet, but Ash's 6 amber eyes showed that he was calm and accepting, which made Tyler feel selfish for protesting. Tyler couldn't believe how the Vrykol had come to terms with its own death. In the next few weeks, something amazing happened. Scientists and researchers started coming to Haven's Reach because they wanted to meet and study the last living Vrykol. But these weren't the business researchers who had used Ash's people as guinea pigs. These were people who came up to me with real respect and asked for permission before every scan, sample, and question. Vanessa was in charge of the research and made sure that Ash was never too busy or treated like a specimen. The Vrykol seemed to enjoy the attention, knowing that the information gathered now might be the only detailed scientific record of its kind that would last. Kevin Park, a young geneticist, made a discovery that changed everything. One morning, he walked up to Tyler and Vanessa with barely contained excitement. Kevin said, "I've been looking at Ash's genetic samples," and he pulled up complicated data on his portable screen. The Vrykol have very stable DNA, which is likely an evolutionary change that helped them live in tough places. This means that genetic material that is still usable could stay intact even after death, maybe for years if it is stored correctly. "What are you trying to say?" Tyler wanted to know. "I'm saying that cloning might be possible. Not right now, we don't have the right tools or the right place to do it. But maybe in a decade or two when science has come a long way, we could use Ash's genetic code to make new Vrykol. It wouldn't really be coming back to life. Each clone would be a new person with their own personality. But the species wouldn't be gone for good." Tyler looked at Vanessa, who was already using her datapad to do math. "It's just a theory," she said slowly. "The science isn't there yet. Kevin is right about the stability of genes, though. There's a chance if we keep samples safe, if the political situation gets stable enough to pay for this kind of research, and if people are behind it. A real chance." That night they told Ash about the idea. The Vrykol paid close attention as they talked about cloning, the timeline, the unknowns, and the options. After they were done, Ash was quiet for a long time before choosing symbols on the translation pad. "Not me. There will be new people, right?" "Yes," Vanessa said. "They would have your DNA, but they would be their own people. They would need to be raised, taught, and given the chance to figure out who they are." "Okay. My people were unique, not copies. New Vrykol should have their own lives if they come after I'm gone. Your own choices. Not forced to be who I was or what I remember." Ash stopped for a moment and added more symbols, "but they should know their history. They should know what happened to their ancestors. Should know the truth, not lies. Will you make this promise?" Tyler said without hesitation, "We promise. The truth will be kept. The story of your people will be told right." For the next few weeks things were both good and bad. Ash was clearly weaker. He moved more slowly and slept longer each day. But the Vrykol looked happy in a way Tyler had never seen before. They had moved to a small research center on the edge of one of Haven's Reach's forested continents. It was a place that Ash thought of when it talked about its homeworld. Ash spent hours outside, lying in the sun, watching the animals and just being. Tyler would sit with it sometimes and not say anything. The human salvager and the dying alien predator had come a long way since that first scary moment in the cargo hold of the abandoned ship, when they shouldn't have trusted each other but did anyway. Lisa and Danny came by often to tell them news from all over the galaxy. The push for accountability was getting stronger. The collective had to make more secret documents public, and each new piece of information made the public angrier. A number of high-ranking officials had been taken into custody. The big companies that made money from mining Ethereum were being sued and boycotted by a lot of people. Lisa told Ash on one visit, "Your people are getting justice. It's slow, it's messy, and it won't bring them back. But what you and Tyler did is changing the galaxy." "Good," Ash said in response. "That's enough." Tyler found Ash lying in a clearing on what turned out to be one of the last warm days of the season. The purple leaf trees that grew in this area surrounded him. The Vrykol's breathing was shallow but steady. Its 6 eyes were half closed as it watched the sunlight come through the trees above. Tyler sat down next to his friend, who was now Ash. Not a rescued animal or an extinct species to study, but a friend who had faith in him when it should have been impossible. "Do you know what I keep thinking about?" Tyler said in a low voice. "That day I found you. I almost didn't cut those ties. I almost talked myself into thinking it wasn't my problem and that I should just walk away and forget I saw anything." Tyler learned that Ash's soft rumble was the Vrykal equivalent of gentle amusement. "I'm glad I stayed," Tyler said again. "I'm glad I was dumb enough to care. Knowing you, being a part of this journey, and fighting for something that really mattered changed everything for me. You changed everything for me." Ash slowly raised one huge paw and put it over Tyler's hand. The gesture was clear. Thanks, friendship, and a connection that the galaxy had said was impossible between species. The sun moved across the sky while they sat there, human and Vrykal, the last 2 members of their unlikely pack. 3 days later, Ash died peacefully in its sleep, surrounded by the people who had fought with it. Tyler stayed with the body for a long time, one hand on the midnight black fur that was already getting cold. Vanessa's team carefully collected the genetic samples and stored them in a special way that would keep them usable for decades. Kevin was already working on getting money and space to do cloning research when he got the news. They put Ash's body in the ground under the trees with purple leaves and marked the grave with a simple stone that had an inscription in several languages, including a phonetic version of what Ash's real name might have been in its own language. The memorial said, "Here lies the last of the Vrykal who died in chains. May their memory keep everyone from being forgotten, and may their bravery inspire those who come after them." Tyler stood in front of a collective tribunal 6 months later to look into the genocide. The organization was almost unrecognizable now, having changed because members of other species demanded better. He talked for 3 days about how he found Ash, learned the truth and fought to make it known. The head tribunal member, an older woman with kind eyes, asked him one last question when he was done. "Mr. Reed, you risked everything for a creature you had just met, a member of a species you had been taught to fear. Why?" Tyler thought about how to respond, remembering the 6 amber eyes that were watching him in the dark of an empty cargo hold. That was the moment that changed everything. "Because someone had to," he finally said. "Because doing the right thing isn't always the safe thing to do. And Ash taught me that the scariest monsters aren't the ones that look different from us. They are the ones who kill millions of people and say it is necessary. The ones who kill off whole species and sleep soundly at night. Those who put money ahead of kindness and call it pragmatism." 3 weeks later, the tribunal's decision came down. The Vrykal extinction was officially called genocide. They were told to pay reparations. The systems around their old homeworld were called protected memorial space. And most importantly, the collective put money into cloning research with the clear goal of bringing the Vrykal species back from the dead. 2 years later, Tyler was in the lab when the first cloned Vrykal opened its 6 amber eyes for the first time in more than 30 years. It was a baby, small and scared, and it didn't look like Ash at all except for its eyes. But it was real and it was alive, and it stood for something Tyler had thought was impossible: hope. The scientists had already said that this would take a while. It would take decades to build a population that could survive. It would be important to raise the cloned Vrykal with care, teaching them about their history while letting them make their own choices. They would be real people, not just statues of dead people. Tyler thought about Ash's last message, which the Vrykal had recorded before it got too weak to use the translation pad. It said, "Tell my people's story. Help them remember. And if new Vrykal come, tell them they are not us but they carry our memory with them. Say, live free." The last wolf was dead. But the species would live on because of that brave wolf, the pack that formed around it, and the people who chose to fight for what was right even when it seemed impossible. Ash died free, surrounded by friends, knowing that the truth would outlive the lies. Tyler thought that was the best they could all hope for in the end. To make the galaxy a little better than they found it, to stand up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves, and to show that sometimes, the most unlikely friendships can change everything. The baby Vrykal looked up at Tyler with those old eyes on a new face. Tyler could have sworn he heard Ash's approval rumbling like distant thunder in his head, along with memories of stars, trees, and purple leaves falling. The pack lasts. The truth lives on. And hope, even though it is weak, lives on.